Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. It is truly an honor for me to speak to you today and to be in such wonderful company and to be a part of this talk. And why not indeed? This thing, American phenomenon that we call college football and marching band, is something very unique and very Americana. And I'm not going to lecture you today on the great history, but you have to understand, I think, where we started. College bands in America. How did they become associated with college football? And it's very simple. They showed up, and they indeed asked themselves the question, why not? At Ohio State, the band showed up at the turn of the century in an old rickety football stadium where Ohio State played football in its early years. And they walked onto the football field and played the Star-Spangled Banner. And we see the marriage of marching bands to college football from that point on. And so it was in 1878 at what was then the Ohio A&M University, from humble beginnings. The Ohio State Band was terrible in its early years. They met in dark rooms and alleys, and in fact were a ragtag group of musicians. Here is a photo from the early 1900s, a very stern-looking group of what was then only men. It was an only men's club. And so from those humble beginnings, innovation began. Innovation began even in 1936 with the first Script Ohio, and a tradition that we love today. And so the question, ladies and gentlemen, for me was, how do we move an organization forward that is so steeped in tradition? How do we push it forward? And in fact, as directors go in the history of the band, I'm rather young, and in its 135-year history, I'm the 9th person to serve at the helm. And so I woke up one morning in a cold sweat thinking, how am I going to move this organization forward? In fact, in my mind's eye, and really in a nightmare, I see a sea of people staring at me with their arms crossed, rather curmudgeon, saying, what are you going to do, kid, that already hasn't been done? You know, the Ohio State Band was good before I got there. What are you going to do, kid, that hasn't been done? And so my answer to that was very simple: tradition through innovation. And I walked into band practice the first day with our students and our leadership team, and I said, tradition through innovation. And they looked at me like I had a third appendage growing out of the top of my head, and they said, tradition through innovation. I said, yes, indeed, tradition through innovation. Today's traditions, today's innovations, that is, become tomorrow's traditions. What we do today, ladies and gentlemen, becomes a tradition tomorrow. And so our challenge was, how do you make a tradition even better? How do you take something and make it even better than what it was? That was our challenge. One of my favorite quotes is, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. And so I took it very, very personally to think what I was going to bring to the table. I took it very personally, seeing in my mind's eye this group of people with arms crossed saying, what are you going to do, kid, that hasn't been done already? And so we began to think and create and be innovative and try some new things. All the while, the watchful eye of the alumni band and the Buckeye Nation focused on us. I remember my first game as the director, walking out into that stadium of 105,000 people thinking, what have I gotten myself into? And that was the first step in our salvo, in our grand experiment of tradition through innovation. So what happened? Well, our recent viewership, we had 45 million hits last year on YouTube. We were seen by 6 billion people globally. and carried on more than 1,000 media outlets in the world. Pretty amazing for a group that was already good before I got there. Let's talk about technology and how we got to where we are today. This photo illustrates high-tech 1950s style. If you look closely at the picture, you'll see the staff of the band huddled around a board, a table, which had a football field painted on it. And each band member was a peg. Well, this was indeed high-tech in 1950. This was revolutionary. In 1950, this was the way they created formations on the field. And aren't they great in their suits and their hair? I love the 1950s style because there they were creating a solution to a problem. There they were creating tradition at that point. And so what happened last year to us was very unique. We married the iPad to the gridiron. An idea by two students revolutionized how the band operates, how the band is organized, and how we teach and learn. These two students came to me 1 year ago, almost to the date, and said, "We've got an idea. How would you like to save on paper?" Knowing that we used 500,000 sheets of paper every year with our marching band, running charts and music and announcements, I thought, absolutely. And so they said to me, "We've got a great idea. We want to use iPads in the marching band. And here's the technology." And I said, "I'll never stand in the way of students with a passion and a plan." And the rest was history. We just completed an advertisement for Apple and the Apple iPad Air. And the architect, one of the architects of that, is a student at Ohio State. And I think it's so important, especially in this university setting, that we recognize the great contribution and symbiotic relationship between staff and students, between professor and students. And it's our job as professors to inspire and to teach and to support that passion. And we did just that. I brought with me today, indeed, the architect of the iPad project for the Ohio State University Marching Band. Welcome, Ryan.
So if you had asked me about a year ago if I would be speaking at a TEDx event about this little idea that I had, I would have called you a complete liar. I had no idea if this idea was going to work. No one else had ever tried it anywhere else in the world, and we were about to take the Ohio State Marching Band, one of the oldest groups on campus, and introduce technology that they'd never seen before. So this idea was between myself and another guy named Charlie. I'm a business major, and he's a computer science major. We were both trumpet players, senior trumpets in the band, and we had seen the band go through, it was about $24,000 every year in paper. There was a lot of waste, and we saw an opportunity to improve it. So the iPad has allowed us to ultimately cut out all of our paper usage. We can use it for our music, our drill, and help us with our organizational functions. And we wanted to present a solution that encompassed everything, not just the drill, not just the music. And so we started doing our research, and we found these apps that allowed us to do these things. And it was kind of one of those nights when Charlie and I were roommates, and we're sitting in our living room and saying, this could actually work. We could actually, why can't we do this? This is something we could actually try, and if we fail, at least we gave it a shot. So we started putting together our presentation, and we went to John, and he told us, like he said before, I won't stand in the way of someone that has a passion and a plan. And our passion, we had to have that fire burning within us to make this project work. And the passion sustained us even through periods of self-doubt when we weren't sure if this was going to actually be successful. And the plan helped us carry out this idea and make it successful. So some of the background on the technology, we used it for all of our sheet music. Previously, we'd have stacks of paper. You have to keep track of it, keep track of your music. With the iPad, we can have it all there organized, and you can annotate it, and it's allowed us to be more efficient during rehearsal. And then on the field, we previously used something that looked like what you see on the screen, but on paper. And there's about maybe 30 to 40 of these every week. The iPad is able to animate those formations. So instead of seeing maybe what was like a flip book or pictures, the iPad's like watching a movie, and you can see how your spot fits into the greater image that the marching band is making on the field. So this has allowed us to be able to learn our shows a little bit quicker because we learn a new show every single week. And then it also allows us to be more precise because it's telling you where you are on the field. So the iPad has also gotten a large amount of public recognition, as you guys have heard about the Apple commercial. And I want to dispel a myth about the iPads. They're not on the field marching and doing what we have to do to put on a show. They're just a tool to help us do it a little bit better. So now John is going to talk to you a little bit about what the real secrets are about the marching band that makes us, year in and year out, able to put out the best shows that you see and the best damn band in the land.
Thanks, Ryan. So the secret ingredients, as long as, ladies and gentlemen, you will not share these with anybody from that state up north and our friends at the University of Michigan, we promise to keep this in this room a little bit. Number one, a culture of servant leadership. I wanted to instill in our students, and especially our leadership team, the fact that they are there serving a group of people. As fans in the stands, we don't watch the band on the field and say, that person is a freshman, and he's a senior, and she is a sophomore, and this person, that's their first year in the band. We as an audience, of course, don't care. And so there is no caste system. There is no first year versus senior empowered. It's servant leadership, and our leadership team has embodied servant leadership this past year. Number two, the student investment. Because they are empowered, they are invested in everything that we do. They are invested in our failures, and they are invested in our mistakes. One game a couple of years ago, it is a mistake when a band member's hat pops off in a show. And as I watched hat after a rainy, humid day, I thought, oh no, the alumni are going to kill me with all these hats on the field. And so that wasn't an individual mistake, that was a band mistake. And the next week at rehearsal, we all wore our hats to rehearsal. We've got to think creatively in the operations and the performances. We've got to think creatively and outside of the box. How do we best represent the music? We could stand in a square on the field and play the music from Jurassic Park. Or we could form a dinosaur who eats a Michigan Wolverine. What sounds better to you? Always ask, how can we do that better? How can we do that better? And we ask ourselves, indeed, this question every year. How can we do it better? Even with Script Ohio, that we've been doing since 1936, we ask, how can we do that better this year? Tradition through innovation, certainly our staple. And this all leads to student experience. What is important to me is the student experience. It's so much less about the music and the marching and about the student experience. And the final result is service before self. This photo illustrates that result in our community. Those are 3 kids who dressed up as Ohio State band members for Halloween, when they could have been a Disney princess, they could have been a pirate, but they chose Ohio State band members. And that is community impact, ladies and gentlemen. That is community impact because of what we do around us, because the students understand servant leadership, and they understand tradition through innovation, and they understand creativity, and they understand that they are part of a greater good. And so our fundamental philosophies: there is more to life than college football. There is more to life than college football, and I would say that one wonderful person who taught me about that was our coach, Jim Tressel. Jim Tressel taught us all at Ohio State that there's more to life than college football, and that on Sunday morning we all get up and go on with our lives. Students are just a part of the greater community. We are in the person-building process. The person-building process, and the great byproduct of that person-building process just happens to be what we do on the field. It's all about student leadership, student experience, and what they take with them as lifelong musicians. Thank you very much. It's been an honor to be here today.